From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John. I'm the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast and the authority on Michigan craft beer. Sean, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I don't know if about being the authority on Michigan craft beer for too much longer, but I'm here and I'm good. How are you?
You're wearing that moniker for the rest of your life. I don't care what happens. That's one of your official titles because you were so adamant about claiming it that whether you let it go or not, I'm not letting it go.
Well, if you think about it, though, let's be honest. Who else could we even hand the torch to? I mean, we got a few other Michigan YouTube people, but I don't consider them to be very good. I mean, I'm the authority.
You know, you have to challenge the throne if you want the throne, and no one's going to do that.
I'm not just going to give it away.
Yeah, fuck that. So, what have you been up to this week?
Watching some, I feel like every week I'm going to say, the French, because it so rolls off the tongue. Not too much. Been watching a couple shows. Watched, I started watching Sandman on Netflix. I'm not far enough into that to really have a good opinion about it. I didn't read the comics. I don't know if you did.
Mm-hmm. I was in high school, and I remember liking it, but to be honest with you, that's about all I remember of it at this point.
Yeah, I started watching the new Beavis and Butthead, the new Mike Judge's Beavis and Butthead.
That's on my that was on my watch list this week too.
Okay, good. And then I watched today. I started for some reason. I watched a lot of stuff. I can't remember what all of it was, but for some reason today I started watching World War II in color, The Road to Victory on Netflix. I don't know. I do know what brought that on, but it's interesting. There's so much about World War II in movies and documentaries and stuff that's in video games. I mean, that's pretty primarily where I've learned probably a lot of stuff about World War II is video games. But the thing that's never covered is really like what happened before the United States got involved. So that's kind of been piquing my interest lately, but that's pretty much what I've been up to. How about you?
So, like you mentioned, or like similar to you, I watched the new Beavis and Butthead. So how do you feel about that? Does my critique on the animation stand up? Because
I don't remember what you said about it.
Pretty much the same style that it looks too good. It's pretty much the same style of animation as the newer movie they put out maybe a month ago now.
Yeah, I noticed that when I watched the first one. I noticed that the side characters, like they were always kind of really shittily drawn, you know, and they seem like they look quite a bit better and they're animated better, which it takes a little bit of a little bit of the bloom off the rose, so to speak, to have it look so good. But I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty funny. I only watched the first episode so far, and so the first one they try to escape from an escape room and they get confused where to actually go for the escape room. And then the second part of the first episode's 20 minutes long. It's basically Beavis and talking to Fire, and Fire tells him to do all this different stuff, which I thought was pretty funny, but it kind of ran a little long. And so now instead of talking about music videos, they talk about internet videos, basically. And the one thing that kind of put me off, I thought it was really funny. I thought their commentary was really good, but the thing that put me off is that the clip just kind of loops. Like they cut it in weird places and the clip kind of loops and you can see it in the background. It's like I've seen this scene in this little vignette that you're talking about 4 times now. It's great that that Mike Judge has enough material, or the writers, whoever comes up with the stuff has enough material to talk about it for that long, but it's kind of just show the whole clip, or I don't know, something.
I don't know if it was in the first or the second episode, because I mean, they're not that long. They're only like, 25 minutes or something to get through them? Yeah, so somewhere between there, 2 of the videos that they watch, their like critique or making fun of it is almost the exact same thing. Like they just kind of imitate how the person is talking on the video. And I was like, all right, that was funny the first time. The second time, it's not working as much for me. But I'm sure if I thought back to the old music videos they did, they probably made the same joke quite a few times. So maybe I'm just overthinking that.
Yeah, I know the first one was the prison tattoo thing, and they talk just like the guy. And that's hilarious, but I could see that kind of getting old.
Well, the second one, I mean, do you care if I say what it is?
No, that's fine.
If you haven't seen it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. They watch an ASMR video, and they talk just like the person doing it, and it's just kind of the same joke with slightly different, subject in that they're critiquing, I guess. I did think the escape room was pretty pretty entertaining, though. I found myself laughing at that probably more than I should. And yeah, the fire one, it felt like it ran maybe 5 minutes too long, but other than that, it was a good thing.
Yeah, it was funny that he was that. I just thought the dynamic between Beavis, fire being the thing that he used to say all the time, which I thought was funny that they really let him say it again after all the controversy. If the listening audience is too young to remember, there was a kid that like burnt his house down, and he blamed Beavis and Butthead, and Beavis would always say fire, fire, and he blamed Beavis and Butthead for him burning down his house. He was like a 10-year-old kid or 11 or something like that. So they cut that from airings of the repeats.
And they also took away his lighter when he would be sitting on the couch just kind of playing with it. And didn't he smoke for a while, like in the original run of it? And I think they took that away too.
Not that I know of. I mean, maybe. I don't remember Beavis ever smoking.
He did. I feel like I remember him like lighting it with like a totally rigged lighter that just like should have lit his hair on fire.
I don't know. I'm sure we could find some evidence of that somewhere.
Research was not done for this, but that's okay.
On the fly.
I did grab a couple movies, but I do want to say before I got on those, I did pop down to North Center this weekend because they had their release for Nice Bloobs. So grabbed a couple cans of that, and that is, I can confirm that is still a very delicious beer. And I don't know if it's still on or if it was just for this weekend, but they have a handful of menu items on there food-wise that are like very blueberry heavy right now. Like they had a blueberry barbecue sauce, because say that 5 times fast, chicken wing that was really good. They had like some kind of dessert thing that was on like a big hunk of cheese basically, and I don't remember, they had 3 different things though that were just around using the blueberries and whatnot. The 2 things I had like that were pretty good. They said they expect that they'll probably have that for about 3 to 4 weeks. So if you are local and in the area, make sure to check that out.
Yeah, that makes me a little sad because I'm not drinking because it's a medication.
You got a can back there, don't worry.
I know, but it still makes me a little sad that I can't. That's like when you base a lot of your identity on going to drink places, which sounds really bad when you say it out of context. Yeah, I just go and drink places. That's what I do. It's kind of when you can't drink for whatever reason, it makes it really difficult to figure out what you're going to do with your all of a sudden extra free time. And I can't spend all that time with my family. So I got to pick up a new hobby or something.
I'm trying to pick up the slack, and I'll drink twice as much for you while you're on this medication.
Appreciate that.
So I won't be making any more any high quality videos about it because I'm not an authority on anything, but I'll make sure that the economy is supported. So
yeah, I'd hate to see all these places go down the tubes because I'm not supporting them.
That would be kind of funny though if you took about a month off drinking and all of a sudden like 4 breweries just shuttered.
Some of your favorite places.
All right. Damn it. So we talked a little before this that we were both kind of not thrilled with this week's UFC event. So I turned that off and I watched that because I kept hearing about it everywhere. I watched the Woodstock 99 documentary that is on Netflix right now, which okay, so first, the title, calling it Trainwreck, is very appropriate because even knowing back when that was going on, I'm like, it's going to be a fucking disaster. I don't know why they're trying to book these bands and you don't book bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit and then call it a peace festival. That's those oil and water, man. Like, it doesn't work. I remember living through that and seeing that. I didn't go to it. I didn't really have interest in it. Kind of like your opinion of Machine Gun Kelly. Limp Bizkit sucks and I don't like them, so I'm not going to pay to see them.
But is it punk music?
No, it is not.
I'm glad we can agree.
I'm sure it stands on the shoulders of what someone else has done and offends them, though. But I mean, I remember seeing all that. I was like, I'm sure you remember like when that was happening too, that you could see that from, I remember MTV covering the hell out of that festival, and you'd see little random updates here and there on like the news and stuff of it, like, oh, Woodstock's going on, hoo-da-ha, whatever. But you could tell it just looked like a shit show, even from what they were showing on MTV. It looked like it was a disaster. And then obviously when it got as bad as it did, it was kind of like, maybe this was partially like a bunch of stupid kids, but looks like these were a lot of like young adults that were kind of pushed to their limit at the same time. And that's more of the, I don't know if you watched it or not yet, but there's some things that they go over in it that's like, okay, you could be treated shitty all you want. There's still no excuse for, this, and this. but some of the other stuff that happens in it, again, them essentially going against the venue. Yeah, that's fine. What do you expect?
I only watched the first episode so far. It's actually something that my wife wants to watch with me. So I've been kind of being a nice guy, because generally I just plow forward and then I'll rewatch it and not say that I watched it. But that's
what
how I
my
do
wife
it.
does to me. So.
Yeah. But I didn't do that yet with this one. But I saw the HBO one that they did a couple years ago with Bill Simmons and The Ringer and all that stuff. They put out a Woodstock 99 documentary, and that one was really very focused on white male angst and sexual assault, and how this music was like a perfect catalyst to have something like this occur. At the time, 99, I was 19 years old. No, I was 99. I was 22. I was 22 years old. So I think I kind of considered going, but like you said, the music altogether just wasn't really something that interested me. Like, I wasn't into Limp Bizkit. I wasn't into the Chili Peppers anymore at that time. Korn had kind of come and gone in my
You don't like songs about California?
Oh my God, no, I cannot stand. Like, I like Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and I like some of the stuff before that, but everything, even Blood Sugar Sex Magic, because that album was so popular, I think those songs, like the skiddly doo dah bebop scat singing shit that Anthony Kiedis does, and the way that his voice just kind of sounds at this point is like nails on a chalkboard to me. I can't listen to any of it. So yeah, I wasn't, the music didn't really tickle my fancy at the time. And I think, like you said, you could kind of, even going into it from an outsider, saying, yeah, this is probably going to be a shit show. Like, I don't need to be here with, I don't know, 300,000 other people, or however many people showed up for that. So, but I'm looking forward to watching the rest, and just to see how it differs even from the Woodstock 99 HBO documentary they did last year, or maybe 2020.
So what I'll say, because it's not like I can spoil the story for you,
Sure.
You know what's going to happen with it. I do feel like they spent a lot of time just blaming white male college kids in this for everything, for better or worse, I guess. There's also a lot of points in it where you're like, God, I fucking hate frat kids. Like,
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you shouldn't really just fucking point a finger like that. But at the same time, when everything they're showing you, it's like, right. Trainwreck is absolutely the appropriate title, because it is totally something. Once you start watching it, it's runs just long enough, because it's about 40 minutes per day is how they set up the episodes. It runs just long enough that I got through it in one night, and I kind of, like, once I kind of got into it, couldn't really look away. So kind of like a train wreck.
Yeah.
So it's very appropriately titled, and I don't know that I would call it an enjoyable watch, but it's, I don't know, if you have any interest in, 90s music and just seeing how fucking stupid a generation can become, it's worth watching.
It's a really good time capsule of 90s pop culture, late 90s, early 2000s pop culture. The one thing I was going to say is that I found it put me a little bit of a nostalgia kind of rabbit hole. I found a YouTube channel that had all the pay-per-view. I don't know if they put out like a box set of all these DVDs of the pay-per-view, but it had all the uncensored pay-per-view. It had like 20 plus hour long.
On YouTube?
Yeah. There's a channel that had a playlist of 25 maybe hour long to hour and 20 minute long performances. So it wasn't like uncut performances.
Okay. It wasn't the crowd stuff that they talk about. It was the performances.
They would have, I didn't dig too deep into it, but from what I saw, they would show like performances of the bands, whatever band it was. They'd kind of go back and forth. They would show like crowd surfing shots, or maybe people just out in tents or whatnot, but I didn't see specifically like them walking through the camp and like interviewing people, or, seeing what kind of mayhem was going on there. But it could. I mean, like I said, there's 25 hours of this shit just kind of living on YouTube. So I'm sure there's something on there. But the one thing I sent you was the Umbilical Brothers. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that. I haven't yet. It was an act. These two comedians that they do, like, what is it called? Like Michael Winslow, human beatbox kind of stuff. They have human sound machines. Yeah. And one of them will do these sounds and the other one will do this routine based on the sounds. And it's just the cringiest thing I have ever seen. And it was after a performance, like in between music performances, while they're setting up the stage behind them or something for the next band to come on. And their act is only 5 minutes, but it feels like an eternity. It is like I don't know, if it wasn't so cringy, it would be hilarious how much they bomb and how much the crowd is like screaming obscenities at them. You need to watch it. We'll link it in the show notes.
Do you know what day it was that happened on?
It was the first day.
Okay. So they weren't like too drugged up and raged yet. So.
No, they weren't getting Molotov cocktails thrown at them or anything on stage. Nothing was thrown at them, I don't believe.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
So the reason I say that, there's a point where they talk about the pay-per-view thing, and I would assume this was on the day one episode, but maybe it's on day two. And they were saying that they flat out were going around in the crowd and going to like the rave hangar, and without going like too in depth on and trying to paraphrase it, he basically said, we just film people fucking is what he claims. So 25 episodes. I mean, I don't know how you're going to hide stuff in there. Maybe YouTube's algorithm sees a long video and just says, and moves on,
there were like exposed breasts and people crowd surfing with their top, that was it was uncut. I didn't see any censored kind of stuff in there. So it was, if they have that on the pay-per-view box set, like, I don't know if this was a produced thing because it all has this guy's somebody's handle encoded by so-and-so kind of thing on it. So I don't know if they, like I said, I don't know if they sold a box set that had all this stuff together or if it was actually taped from pay-per-view just on different VHS tapes and converted. But it's
that
definitely
sounds more likely. So.
Yeah, it could be for sure.
The other thing I watched before we get into our subject, I went back and I had wanted to watch this more than you did apparently, but I watched Studio 666. You probably made the right choice by not getting excited about that one. So,
I heard it was so good.
I actually did hear a lot of people say that it was really good, which is part of why I got interested in it. It's funny, is like pretty much everyone that's in that band that has another band they were in before the Foo Fighters, I like all the previous bands a whole lot more. And there is some cool like this song that they're trying to write through this whole movie. It does sound pretty rad throughout most of it, but it is kind of like the old Kiss movies and stuff like that. It's a very clear case of, oh yeah, these guys are musicians, not actors. And it's very apparent very quickly in the movie. I feel like I say this not every week, but it's another one of those, like, if you could cut 15 to 20 minutes out of this, I might have liked it a lot more type movies. But yeah, that's a movie. So you can watch that if, people at home, if you want something to put on. It's got Dave Grohl. So
yeah, and you can't see him anywhere. He's reclusive. So if you're missing your Dave Grohl, you can watch Studio 666.
Well, he is now, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, but that guy was so... All right, well, let's move on. Well, this will be another 20 minutes if we start talking about Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl.
That's fair. So we're actually pretty on the ball as far as the topic this week, though. We're talking about what is currently the new high score for this, the number one ranked movie in IMDb world, the movie Prey that just came out this week on Hulu. You actually sent me the trailer for this a couple weeks back, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and I didn't even know this movie existed, let alone that it was a Predator movie, until I got about maybe a minute into that trailer. I'm like, holy shit, there's a Predator. Okay. So this movie did come out from when we're recording this past Friday, I believe. By the time you hear this, it'd probably be on Hulu for about 2 weeks or so. The basic premise of this movie is this is really more of a survival story. It takes place about 300 years. It just says 300 years ago, but it looks like 1700s-ish or so, right in that area.
I think it says 1719 or something like that at the beginning.
Does it?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, the synopsis just says Comanche Nation 300 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, this is the story of a young hunter who thinks she's hunting a bear, but it turns out she's being hunted by the predator. That's a very high-level view of it. I don't know if we want to go, well, I'm going to say right off the bat, because there's truthfully the way this story plays out. If you haven't seen this movie yet, going to have a hard time avoiding not spoiling much on this just because of how it plays. There's no huge plot twist in this movie. It's kind of right down home plate. This is what this movie is. I also think that, and we haven't talked about this movie ahead of time yet other than the trailer, but I think we're going to kind of differ than what the kind of consensus is that I'm seeing people talk about on this movie. Because I'm seeing polar extremes. I'm seeing people who either absolutely love this movie and think it is the best Predator movie since the original, which it might be. I'd have to go back and watch the Robert Rodriguez one, which I remember liking that, but it's probably been 10 years since I've watched that, so maybe it hasn't aged well. I'm not really sure. And then the other thing I'm seeing a lot of is people calling it predator, woke culture, super over the top feminist in like an insulting way, which I don't agree with that either. I think I didn't read that much into this movie, but I do think that kind of scaling back the Predator and scaling back the concept of what a Predator movie can be, it did really work for this movie. You know, instead of seeing big army dudes running around with, you know, submachine guns and grenades and all that, you know, Arnold, all that stuff, which will always be better. Let's not act like that movie's not 100 times better than this one. Scaling it back and using kind of more primitive weapons, using just bows and axes and stuff like that, using traps in the woods, even a hunting dog is a major part of this movie. And showing the Predator as a character that is mortal and woundable throughout this movie, who hasn't quite advanced to the point where he is when we meet them in 1980. Was it 87? I think was that movie.
Yeah, 87, 89, in that range.
Something like that. Yeah, so he's not nearly as advanced as what he is, you know, roughly 250 years later, or whatever the case is. It plays pretty well. I won't go as far as to... I did find myself kind of looking at my watch here and there throughout the movie, especially in the first half of the movie. But, you know, as a whole, it runs smoothly. It's gorgeously shot for the parts where you can actually see the scenery. The effects will leave you a little wanting. At least they left me a lot of wanting. And there's some other questionable choices in it, which we'll come back around to. But what do you think about it?
Well, I was going to say, why don't we start with what we liked about it?
All right, kick us off.
Okay, so I liked the setting. I thought it was really kind of inventive to have a setting of a movie, an action movie, a sci-fi, I guess it's a sci-fi thriller kind of movie. Sci-fi thriller action. Arrange those in whatever way that you want. You know, we got the sci-fi with the Predator. We have the action. Obviously, it's a bit of a thriller, like a hunting. The hunter becomes the hunted kind of thing. I love that the movie's called Prey. Like you said, I didn't... This was not on my radar at all. And I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. I think I saw the trailer on YouTube. Like I said, I don't ever watch trailers. And I saw it and I'm like, that movie's coming out. I've heard it has something to do with the Predator. Let's watch the trailer. I watched the trailer. I thought it was cool. So I like the time period. I like that it's a little bit more primitive. I like the setting. I didn't really have any issue with being able to see everything going on, you know, in the dark, or some of the movie takes place in the dark. Some of it doesn't. Special effects, I didn't really have any complaints about it. I thought it was all done pretty well. I liked that the Predator used, you know, it's 1719, let's face it, that's 400 years. It's not 300 years. But no, that's not 400 years. That'd be 21. It's 300 years. 300 years and some change. That makes sense. That tracks. My math is not great. But I like that the Predator was also, his technology was a little bit less advanced as well.
Scale back.
Yeah. And I liked all that stuff. I didn't, like you said, I didn't read too much into the whole woke culture. I think that's kind of, I don't know. That's a discussion for another day, but I didn't really find that it was necessarily like, I don't think in the 1700s, I don't know that much about Native Americans, but I don't think that the Comanche culture was too open arms about women being hunters. I think one thing that I thought was kind of weird was, like, in the movie, a couple times in the movie, all the women are going out to do their gathering or whatnot, and our main character here, Naru, is like going the opposite way, and nobody says anything. Nobody stops her from doing this. They're just like, damn, okay, she's not going to pull her weight, and she's not going to gather the, I don't know, tubers or whatever we're going to eat today. She's going to go out and hunt. Like, that's cool. I thought that was kind of odd. Like, somebody would have said something, and maybe that's nitpicking. Like you said, there weren't a whole lot of burly buff dudes. It's mostly these kind of, you know, slight Native Americans who are hunter-gatherers. They don't have refrigerators. They don't have protein shakes, and they're not lifting, you know, rustic dumbbells out in the woods to get all big and bulky. So I like the setting. I liked really all that stuff. I don't have too many complaints about this movie. Like you said, I think there was, at the beginning, the first half is a little slow. They're setting it up, and it kind of is a little slow to get going. And I did have okay, how much time is left in this kind of feeling, really pretty much right after we meet the Predator. And I really, really, really enjoyed, there aren't really any plot twists. This is very straightforward. The thing that I really enjoyed about this is the introduction of the third group, right? The French settler, the French trappers, basically. There's like this little part of the movie where they interact with these French people, and I thought that was really cool. Like, I don't think that they would have done what they did with Nauru realistically in the 1700s, but that being said, I thought it was cool that they introduced
they also
this third
didn't
group.
Realistically have predators in the 1700s.
Well, true.
So,
but they kind of just they capture her and they don't mistreat her at all. And I have a feeling in a French camp, a French trapper camp, a French trapper camp in a French trapper camp in 1719. I don't think they would just had some one lone caged native woman and they would have just left her caged. I think some nefarious activity would have been done to her, even though they wanted the information that she had.
Yeah, you're probably right there. I mean, as far as the stuff that I really liked in this, I really liked the scenery, the setting, even the time period, all that. I'm either I'm fine with or liked or somewhere in between on that. Like, there was no negative to any of that. The real introduction of the Predator in this movie, the way they do it, I thought was really cool. And this is a Predator movie. This isn't a, zombie movie or a slasher movie. This is, you're going to see a ton of CGI in this. Like, that's just what it is. And the majority of the CGI that you do see, for the most part, looks pretty decent. There's a couple spots where you can kind of nitpick on it, but it's certainly better than anything that we've seen in this franchise to date, or recently. Well, yeah, to date. What I didn't like about the effects is I felt like there were too many times where they cut away from whatever the effect was going to be. Like, you would see them kind of doing like a finishing move, for lack of better wording, and instead of showing, the gory parts with it, you would just see like if they were going to spear someone or something, you'd see the spear going down, like you'd see the shaft of the spear and you'd see a little bit of blood come up, but you would never see the actual like effect. There were several points in the movie where I was like, why did they keep cutting away to this part? Like, again, this is a Predator movie. I expect to see things getting impaled and blowed up and whatever. It's certainly not going to leave you with a thought of it's not like the, what was the one I think it was the Alien vs. Predator one where they tried to slap a PG-13 on it for some reason.
I think that was Alien.
It's not
AVP.
like that. Yeah. I had mixed opinions about the whole third group, the French people that show up. I like that they added the additional group and kind of added if there was anything that was a curveball in this movie, that was it.
Yeah.
But you kind of figure it out through the course of the movie too, that someone else is there that's not the Predator. I just felt like they came off as kind of stupid in a way. Not necessarily stupid like in their presence or what they did in the movie, just they seemed really dumb.
Yeah.
To me.
They made stupid choices.
Yeah. And they did it consistently. I'm probably nitpicking on that as much as anything. The third act of the movie where, after we get our French people introduced and basically get predatored, the third act is kind of what you expect in the good versions of I'm going to say the good Predator movies that we had, but I appreciate that they didn't just do a shot for shot remake of what Arnold did, because that was one of the things I didn't like about the last Predators. Just fucking
I think it was
pause for a second here. Yeah, they really need a better naming. That's actually one thing I might like about this movie that I hadn't said before, but I like that this isn't called Predator, Predators, The Predator. Like,
right.
Thank you for giving me a different name, even though I didn't know it was a Predator movie until it was basically released. At least I can differentiate this one when I talk about it.
Yeah.
So the end, it's cool seeing this fight happen without phasers, without excessive lasers. They still have the little 3-dot thing, but it's nowhere near the technology that it is in the newer movies at any point. Is it believable? On the one hand, no. On the other hand, Predators aren't believable either. So, what do you want to do? Is it worth, like, totally throwing the movie out? No. I mean, I was entertained with it. I guess my bigger concern, I wouldn't say concern, that's a stupid way to say it. My bigger, gripe with it is, unlike the previous entries in the movies that I've seen of this franchise I've liked, I don't have a big, compelling, draw to really want to watch it again. It's kind of feels like it's one of those things, like if it was on, this wouldn't be the case because it's on Hulu, but if you just pass it like flipping through channels or something and it was on, I could totally see myself leaving it on and saying, all right, this is kind of cool. Like one of those movies that you just kind of watch because you don't want to look for anything else anymore. But I really can't see myself kind of being drawn back to really want to sit down and watch it again, unless I just was like, I'm really in the mood to marathon a handful of Predator movies.
Yeah, to kind of go back to what you said, I'm also glad that it wasn't just a shot for shot kind of remake. And they kind of sprinkle in these little ideas in the movie where Arnold, to hide from the Predator in his movie, he covered himself in mud, and that mud is what covered up his heat signature. I think it's kind of inherent that the way you're going to defeat the Predator is that, and of course we know that as the audience, but the people in the movies don't know that, is to somehow mask your heat temperature. And their heat temperature, I think that's kind of a oxymoron, but mask your temperature, right? Your heat signature. There's a scene really early in the movie where Naru falls in this like pit of quicksand or mud or something, and she gets covered in mud. And I'm thinking to myself, that was a watch looker time, because I'm like, there's an hour left of this movie. Yeah. She's just going to run around with mud all over, and that's how she's going to avoid the Predator. I think the gimmick that they use to have her avoid the Predator's heat vision is utterly ridiculous. Like, it's this little herb mixture that she makes up, and it like instantly turns her heat signature off, and he's unable to track her. I think we're movie nerds, right? We talk about nerdy and garbagey movies all the time. So we can kind of argue this point. If you were as overpowered as this Predator is, he can go invisible. I mean, essentially, he can jump. He's like a squirrel. He's like super acrobatic. He can jump between trees. He can do all this stuff.
He reminds me of a orangutan when he's jumping through the trees.
Yeah, or like Incredible Hulk, how he just jumps all over the place. He can do all this stuff. A group, 30 to 40 Frenchmen aren't going to pose any kind of problem to him. A girl with a hatchet on the end of this lashing rope that she made is like the strongest thing on earth. Like, give me one of those ropes, because she just weaves this little, from like bark, basically lashings, creates this super strong rope that she attaches to her I guess, is it a tomahawk? I guess it's a tomahawk. And she just like flings this thing all over the place. She's like doing all this stuff, little technical nitpicky things. I mean, we could get into the weeds on it, but I do like that everybody's a little bit primitive, but I just think it's a little, I don't know, it's a little bit over the top at this point, that the thing you can just, if you can mask your heat signature, there's no issue with the Predator. I do like that they've continued this kind of like, if you're not a threat to the Predator, then the Predator doesn't really want you as its prey. And I think the movie title, you kind of hit on this, the movie title Prey works in both ways, right? Because Naru and the tribe that she's with are the prey, right? But the Predator also becomes the prey at the end, because she is this like, she's figured out through trial and error and through seeing other people, she's really smart, and she figures out, how to take care of this Predator. So I just thought it's not something that, if it was on TV, and like you said, I was done. I flipped around all the channels, looked at my movie guide, and I just didn't have anything else to watch and didn't want to think about like, oh, I really want to watch this other movie. I'd probably watch part of this again, but as well as they did all the ideas in this, I don't feel compelled really to sit down and watch this again.
It's such a high bar to compare this to the original, because I'm of the camp that thinks the original is one of the best action, sci-fi, whatever you want to call it, movies ever made. Like, I love that movie. So to me, like, there's, aside from the Predator, there's really no memorable character, maybe the dog, but even what's her name, Naru? Like, I didn't know any of these people's names without looking at it. Like, that's the only reason why I know who any of them are. I have no idea who any of these actors are, which I'm fine with that. Like, you can become memorable being a no-name actor. That's easy enough. But it's not that I wouldn't say that it's a matter of relating to these characters. That's fine. I don't really have an issue with that, but they're not really that interesting. Again, it's so straightforward of a story where it's just like I said, the basic premise is she thinks she's hunting a bear and she finds a bear and then she finds out that there's something bigger and badder than the bear. And then then you have a Predator movie.
And I do want to touch and say, with not having a lot of named actors, this movie is actually pretty well acted. I mean, I never thought that these were people that a lot of these people, number one, a lot of these people that are playing Native Americans are actually Native Americans, which is super cool. I thought that for some of these people having maybe one other credit, Amber Midthunder plays Naru, the main character of this movie. She probably has the most credits out of anybody. And it's a lot of TV stuff and a lot of like, you know, stuff that I've never seen before, but she had a lot of credits to her name. So just that's one thing that I want to point out, even amongst all the other, you know, constructive criticism that we're giving, that it's really acted pretty well, considering, even if you throw out the quote unquote, considering these people don't have a lot of roles. You know, with that being said, with these people not having a lot of credits, they do a pretty good job. It was believable. Like, their acting was pretty good and better than some movies that we've watched that are like, you know, AAA titles that have come out.
Oh yeah. I would actually say, of the movies that we've talked about that are 2022 releases, this is probably the best one that we've done. Well,
Nick Cage.
I didn't count that because it's not like that kind of genre. There's Nick Cage and there's Batman. So
yeah.
But I mean, as far as like the stuff that maybe falls into horror, I'd say this is probably if this is horror, then this is probably the best one that we've watched like that.
And I would even venture to say, for me, I don't know if you agree with this, but amongst all the horror movies, and it seems like we've been doing a lot of the horror type stuff lately, this is probably one of the better, you know, I would say this is probably top out of the 3 that we've watched so far. We did X, we did The Black Phone, and this. Is there any other horror, like new horror movies for 2022? Well, I think for 2022, that's all the horror movies that we've...
There's Scream, but we haven't done that yet. Which that would be the one. I enjoyed Scream more than I enjoyed this, but that's probably more of a matter of preference than a matter of like speaking to quality of the movie or anything like that. One thing I will say that I just thought of that's kind of, for me, kind of nitpicky. I thought the callbacks to the previous movie, to the original movie, the line where he says, "If it bleeds, we can kill it," I thought that felt really, really forced on it. Like, it almost would have been, and I'm sure there's other things in there that I either missed or looked over or whatever, but that line especially just really stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, you really didn't need to kind of push that at this point. We already know what we're watching here. But I mean, as a whole, it's, you know, if you like sci-fi movies really at all, I'd go as far as to say this is kind of a must watch, because you really don't get a lot of movies like this at this point. Like, sci-fi movies that don't have a Marvel character or a DC character or some kind of, I guess this does have a pre-existing like IP behind it, but it's not something that's rooted in, well, they did make Predator comics, but I think that came out after the movies.
Yeah, it did.
But it's definitely worth watching. If it were me, like I said, I'd say this all the time, I'd probably find a way to trim down 20 minutes out of this movie if you could. And you could probably take a lot of that right off the beginning, because I'm sure what they were going for with that first hour or so of the movie was character development, but I don't feel like they succeeded with that. Like, I didn't really feel like I knew that much about any of these characters to care about that character development.
Yeah, I don't know if I can agree with you about cutting that much time out of it. I don't think you could cut that much time. I think the beginning did have a pretty strong character development, and it really develops the only character that you need to care about, which is Naru and maybe her brother Tabe. You might be able to trim a few minutes off here and there, but I thought they did a pretty good job of setting it up, letting you know, hey, she's trying to become one of the hunters. She knows medicine. She's good at tracking, you know, stuff like that. So it sets up that later in the movie. Like, I think that if they weren't to say any of that stuff and all of a sudden she's able to like help heal her wound, or to, you know, hunt a little bit better, or she's really good with her tomahawk. I mean, there's like an extended sequence, which they could have cut down, of her like throwing her tomahawk back and forth like between these trees. Yeah, we could have had a little bit less of that, but I think if if they didn't have any of that stuff and we watched it and in the movie that happened, we'd be like, where did she get all these powers all of a sudden? You know, so I think it's like a double-edged sword.
You kind of turn into, I could see that. It turns into The Force Awakens with, what's her face again, the lightsaber and just.
Right. Yeah, just shredding shit.
So maybe I'll split the difference to say they could cut out 10 minutes and I would have been content. So
we could probably cut 10 minutes out of this movie and make it a little bit snappier.
Yeah, that works. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's really no major complaint with it. Again, my biggest gripe would just be that I don't feel a huge draw to come back to it. I think if I was going to do anything to go back to it, I'd want to watch the Rodriguez version of Predators, whatever, and then watch this again just to kind of see how I feel. Because, you know, like any other self-respecting nerd, I like to kind of set ranks of things up in my head and see which one I like more for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I might do it again just to kind of do that, but I'm in no big hurry to do that. You know, thinking hot dogs as we like to do around here, I'd probably give this around 6.5 out of 10, 6.5 hot dogs out of 10 hunting dogs, right in that area. It's good. I like it. I would definitely, again, recommend it for anyone who likes Predator movies or sci-fi movies in general, or really just, you know, spectacle movies that are new and take advantage of, you know, good cameras. It's definitely worth that too, as long as you don't mind seeing a good chunk of blood in the middle of it. But I don't think it's quite at the point where it's, you know, saying that it's the best movie since the original one. I don't feel like it's a very high bar because, again, let's be realistic. Most of the Predator sequels have been pretty terrible. I think this is our 7th one, maybe 6th one, something like that, give or take a Predator. And of those, you know, aside from the original, I can only think of one that I would say is even good, let alone, you know, really good.
I mean, this is definitely top 7 of Predator movies.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So it's clearly in the upper, you know, out of 10 Predator movies, it's clearly in the top 7. So
yeah.
I don't know. Where do you put this one?
I would probably give this 7 hot dogs out of 11 Predator shields, which I have to say, like, if there's any weapon that needs to be brought forward, and I don't know why it's been gone for so long, if it wasn't, I don't think it's been a Predator weapon previously, they need to have all these guys have these shields, because this thing, it's like the Chop-O-Matic. It does it all. It slices, it dices, it blocks like incoming bullets, musket bullets, right? I mean, you know, that's probably not a heavy load to lift, but yeah, I would say 7 out of 11. I think that this one is, it probably, if you're a Predator completionist, like if you just love the Predator, you love the Alien versus Predator movies, you feel like this is a really good, you know, it fits into that lineage really well. I think it definitely has the feel. Obviously, it has a Predator in it. It's called a different thing, like you said. That makes it so much easier to keep straight. I think I have a real soft spot for Predator 2. Like, I really like the Danny Glover in LA, like South Central LA, the heat, all the colors and all the stuff from Predator 2.
It's
I really enjoy.
Very, very stylized. That doesn't surprise me because that movie is super stylized. And, you know, for someone who likes to go back and have that nostalgia feeling, that doesn't surprise me at all that you like that one a lot.
Well, and it kind of more develops the lore of the Predator, whereas the first one, Arnold's fighting the Predator. We know the Predator comes, he's predating, you know, he's being a predator, he's hunting these people down. But in the second one, we start to get a little bit more into like, oh, this is a species that travels around the universe to find all these, you know, they have all the different skulls and whatnot in the ship. I thought that was pretty cool, and it kind of sets that up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I'm talking about Danny Glover so long, or why anybody would think he's like a specimen that we need to hunt down, but he's getting too old for this shit anyways. But I would say that if you're a Predator completionist, this is definitely one you need to watch. If you're just kind of interested, I think that it changes the whole dynamic of what we think about a Predator movie a little bit with the different characters. It's refreshing to see, and not only because it seems like, you know, this is the year of the feminist, or it feels like we're being more diverse, right, in movies, but I think it is. You can't keep doing the same thing. I mean, how many times are you going to have this muscle-bound dude fight a muscle-bound alien from outer space? I mean, obviously, the alien from outer space, not an illegal alien, or even a legal one. Naturalized citizen, nonetheless. But I think it really kind of, it changes it up. It makes it a little bit more exciting. You can't just have the same thing happen every movie. And they do switch it up. And I think this is a good kind of reformulation on that idea. not only for Predator purists. I think that you could go into this, you could think of this as a prequel and even maybe go into this as your first Predator movie to kind of open the door. You know, it's not a bad, it's a lot better than the last one.
It would make sense chronologically.
Yeah, it's a lot better than the last one, and it beats the hell out of most of the AVP kind of franchise. So for those reasons, that's why I'm giving it a 7 out of 11.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw it in here. While we're talking about things we like, aside from the Chop-O-Matic, I don't know if it's supposed to be bone or ceramic or what, but whatever his helmet is in this one, it looks like bone, so I'm going to say that's what it is. I thought that was a really cool look in comparison to the old metal ones that look like just a saw blade that happened to fit a Predator head. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, I did like the helmet a lot too.
Yeah, it just looked, to me, it looked more primitive. We've said that word a couple times, but I don't, purely correct sounds really stupid because we're talking about an alien, but period correct. The other thing we'll throw in there is we're gonna, on the fly, I'm gonna call a drinking game for this episode. Let us know how many times that we use the word predator as a verb, the word predatoring. Let us know. If you let us know and send us a address, I'll send you a Dewey Pod Monster sticker to go on whatever you want to put it on. Since we're making up words and we're making up verbs, it seems like an occasion to try and, make a point of seeing what happens with that. Do you got anything else to add this one before we wrap here?
No, I just, like I said, it didn't blow me away, but it was a pleasant surprise at how it kind of outlived. It was a little bit better than I expected it to be, all things considered.
I think that's all we got on this one, though. Again, this is probably a little bit tighter of an episode, so we're trying to keep things reeled in a little bit. Again, let us know how many times we use the word predator as a verb in this, and we'll send you something fun. You can send that information to us on all our social medias. Anywhere that you can go on socials, we are at Dewey Pod Monster. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, all those good things to this. You can find the podcast at anchor.fm/Dewey Pod Monster or on Spotify, Apple, Android, whatever. I don't even know if Sean wants to plug his plugs right now, but I'm going to ask him to do it anyway. Sean, where can people find all your good stuff?
If you leave us a message, we might play it on a future episode. Leave us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing. You can find out a little bit more about my beer reviews, about being the authority on Michigan craft beer at youtube.drafttherapy.com. I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus right now because of some health issues. With any luck, in the next few months and after all the fun stuff that's going to happen in my life, maybe I'll be talking more about Michigan craft beer. You can find me on all the socials at Draft Therapy.
All right. Well, again, let us know what you think about this. Let us know how many times we used a made-up word, and we will be back next week with something else to talk about. So have yourself a good week, and we'll talk to you soon. It's the joy of having the power to edit. You can make yourself
say whatever the fuck you want. Fuck your Michigan beer.